13 months ago, I, 27-year-old female, had the happiest day of my life and gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Amy, female, 1-year-old. She has her daddy's eyes in my face, and despite being a little underweight when she was born, she has been developing perfectly. She is everything we ever wished for, especially after several years of struggling to conceive. Recently, I went back to work as a nurse at the hospital. My husband, Sandro, male, 31 years old, is independently employed and can work from home and watch Amy at the same time while I work. Since I went back to work, my home life has become tense. I see so many accidents at work for kids of all ages, but especially the ones involving younger kids hit me hard, even when I'm not the one treating them. I've been very protective and careful since she was born, but it has become worse since I went back to work. Just leaving her alone during the nights has become hard. When she cries, I immediately run over because I fear something happened. When Sandro puts Amy to bed, I always have to double-check that no choking hazards are in the bed, that everything around her is properly secured, that the windows are closed, and the list goes on. It's not because I distrust Sandro and his abilities as a dad. He is a great husband and father. A gentle giant who vowed to be a great father and has so far been amazing. He is the seemingly typical ex-military badass, but he is a total girl dad. For Amy's first birthday, he was in a princess dress and baked cupcakes. He has now started planning to build a giant play castle in the garden for when she is older. Sadly, Sandro did not have a good father. So while I was pregnant, he was extremely anxious that he'd turn into the same monster. Now that I am so overprotective and double-checking after my husband, he is hurt and feels like I am doubting him. He always asks me to trust him, and I do, but I know from experience that even the best and most responsible parents can make mistakes, and those mistakes can cost them the lives of their babies. Sandro has tried being understanding, especially when I explain to him that it's the same as him always checking that the house alarm is activated and that the weapons he has around the house are all in working order before he goes on a work trip during which I'd be alone. Just a bit of paranoia as a result of our work. It worked for a bit like that, but last week it came to a head. A 9-month-old girl was brought in because a kettle with boiling water fell on her head. All I will say is that she did not make it, and I was present when we were told to stop trying to revive her. I was sent home early by my boss, who knows I have a baby around the same age. That night, I cried myself to sleep in the nursery while my husband held me. Ever since that day, I've been unable to stop thinking and worrying. I've been driving Sandro nuts, requesting updates from him. I tried to keep it to a minimum, but I would text him and ask where Amy was, how she was doing, and request pictures so I could spot any possible invisible dangers. I know Sandro is a good and overprotective parent himself, but I just wanted to be sure, and with my job, I know what to look for. Sandro was patient for the first 2 days, but on the third day, he suddenly didn't respond after the first 2 updates in the morning. I started spamming him and calling him frantically and received no reply. At this point, I was completely beside myself and asked a police officer friend of mine to do a welfare check when he isn't busy on an active call. I didn't make an official report or 911 call, just a text to a friend. Turns out Sandro was in a very important meeting that he had told me about a few days prior, but I forgot. The meeting was with very important clients, and it was interrupted by a cop knocking and saying Amy's mother had requested a welfare check. Once the situation was cleared up, the police officer left and I was given the all clear. But no matter what Sandro did, the meeting was ruined and the deal fell through. Public image is very important in my husband's area of work, and a cop coming for a welfare check is not a good look. Sandro is now furious with me. He told me that he has been patient, but that I need to get a grip on my overprotectiveness, or he is going to consider at least temporary separation until I have gotten the help I need. I know he is right. I know my issues are going way too far, that they're damaging to me, my husband, and my child. But at the same time, I can't help but think that I am right to some extent. Yes, I went too far with sending the police. I know that. But what if something had happened? What if he fell asleep and Amy had fallen out of her high chair? What if she began choking on a toy? What if she was silently hurt and he didn't notice? At least this way I know my baby is safe. I told him as much and he exploded at me, that he could handle taking care of a baby, that we can't coddle Amy that much, and that babies are more resilient than I'm giving them credit for, that for every baby I treat, thousands are completely fine. Sandro was also angry that I clearly distrust him and think he isn't a good dad, which isn't true, but I understand how it looks that way. We began arguing like we've never argued before, including about how irresponsible it was of him to turn his phone off for the meeting so I couldn't reach him. We only stopped when Amy woke up from our shouting. I went to get her, but my husband was faster and sat on the couch with her. I was just watching, and he snapped at me if he was still allowed to hold her or not, and I left to go to bed without another word. Sandro apologized later for screaming, and I could tell he was genuinely upset, because his own dad always screamed his mother into submission, and he hates arguing with me in any way. I apologized for pushing him to that point, ruining his deal, and possibly damaging his reputation in his social work circles. Then he said that he shouldn't have yelled, but that he meant what he said. Now for an update. Sandro gave me the ultimatum to either quit or work in a different field, go to therapy and get a grip on my issues, or he would at least temporarily separate, maybe eventually divorce me. I'm at a loss now. I love Sandro, and I do not want to lose him. I'm willing to do as he asks, but I also feel like unlearning to be so vigilant would just be endangering Amy again. I know that's kind of the point, that I should want to unlearn to be like this. But what if something happens because I do? I would never forgive myself if my negligence caused harm to my baby. Does anyone have experience with this overprotectiveness they could share? How can I work to even get myself to go to therapy without feeling like it's endangering Amy? How can I make sure my husband knows I trust him? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Sorry for being blunt, but the path you are on now leads to divorce and no contact with your child as soon as she turns 18. You say you trust your husband, but you don't. You have to double check, meaning you trust yourself to do it right, but you don't trust him to do it right. Yes, bad things happen. Being careful is something good, but you sound absolutely panicked for no reason, and that's not healthy for you, your husband, or your child. Protecting the kid from any potential scratch will make her unable to navigate life. She needs to learn that you get up after you fall. A kid without bruises is a kid that never really played. Do you want to suffocate your kid with all the attention and care to the point she's unable to live her life? Keep going and your husband divorces you. There will be shared custody. You won't have any control over his time. She will have a loving home there. She will be happy there. And she will feel suffocated with you. Guess whom she will be closer to? You need therapy to learn how to cope with all the gruesome things you see in your job. Learn how to make your child feel loved and supported in a way that lets her grow as a strong and resilient person. Comment 2. How can I get to therapy without feeling like it's endangering Amy? OP, I am a now adult who is in Amy's position. My mom had a job like yours, and seeing kids hurt and dying definitely affected how she raised us. The only activity I ever did was piano lessons, and I never got to do anything physical like gymnastics or sports as a kid because the fear was too great. I never roughhoused, never really played physically with other kids at all. As a result, I now lack a lot of intuitive spatial awareness that kids who get tossed around when they're younger develop. I hit my head a lot now on stuff that I should notice, but just don't, and I believe that it's because of this. I worry about the damage these hits will cause me long term. While I understand my mom's intentions were good, and I do feel like it has hindered me, and I wish she had gone to some sort of therapy to address her trauma from being a nurse because, yes, it is traumatic to be in those situations, then come home to your kid. There is no way in which therapy for your trauma will hurt you or your kid. It can only help her and your relationship with your husband. Please go, if only for their sakes. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all this. So after that huge blowout with Sandro, things have been really tense at home. I decided to take a few days off work to try and sort things out. I thought maybe if I was around more, I could ease my mind and show Sandro that I trust him. But it didn't really go as planned. On the first day, I tried to relax and let Sandro handle things with Amy. I stayed in the background, trying not to hover. But every time Amy made a noise or did something that seemed even slightly risky, I found myself jumping up to check on her. Sandro noticed and got really frustrated. He told me that my constant worrying was making him feel like he couldn't do anything right. That night after Amy went to bed, we had another long talk. Sandro opened up about his own fears and insecurities. He told me that he's always been scared of turning into his father and that my lack of trust was making him feel like he was failing. He said he needed me to believe in him, not just for his sake, but for Amy's too. He said that if I didn't get help, he would have to take a step back for his own mental health. I realized then that my actions were not just affecting me, but my whole family. I agreed to start therapy and look into other job options. The next day, I made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in postpartum anxiety. It was a big step for me, but I knew it was necessary. In the meantime, I tried to find ways to show Sandro that I trusted him. I started by giving him more space with Amy. I would leave the room when he was playing with her or putting her to bed. It was really hard at first, but I could see that it made a difference. Sandro seemed more relaxed and confident, and Amy was happy and safe. During one of our therapy sessions, I talked about the incident with the boiling water at work. The therapist helped me understand that my job was triggering my anxiety and that I needed to find a way to separate my work life from my home life. She suggested that I take a break from nursing and explore other career options that wouldn't be as stressful. I talked to Sandro about it, and he was really supportive. He said he would help me find a new job and that we could manage financially until I found something. I started looking into administrative roles at the hospital and other less stressful positions. It was a big change, but I knew it was the right thing to do for my family. As I started to make these changes, I noticed a shift in my relationship with Sandro. We were communicating better and working together as a team. I could see that he was trying to be more understanding of my fears, and I was making an effort to trust him more. One evening, while we were sitting on the couch after putting Amy to bed, Sandro shared a story from his childhood that I had never heard before. He told me about a time when his father had left him alone in the house for hours and how scared he had been. He said that experience had shaped his determination to be a better father and to always be there for Amy. Hearing Sandro's story made me realize how much he had been carrying with him and how important it was for me to support him. I promised him that I would work on my issues and that we would get through this together. Over the next few days, I continued to attend therapy and work on my anxiety. I also started to see the positive changes in Sandro. He was more confident and relaxed, and our relationship was getting stronger. We were both learning to trust each other more and to communicate better. One day, while I was at a therapy session, Sandro took Amy to the park. When I got home, I found a note from him saying that they had gone out for some fresh air and that he would be back soon. Instead of panicking, I decided to take a deep breath and trust that everything would be fine. When Sandro and Amy came back, they were both smiling and happy. Sandro told me about their day at the park and how much fun they had. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot to me. It showed me that I could trust Sandro and that Amy was safe with him. As I continued to work on my anxiety, I started to see more positive changes in our family. Sandro and I were communicating better, and I was learning to let go of my fears. I knew it would be a long journey, but I was committed to making it work. Thank you for reading and for all your support. Am I the idiot for rehoming 3 of our dogs without telling my wife? My wife, female 30, and I, female 30, have been together for 5 years. When we first got together, we had in common that we were dog people and started living together with our 3 dogs. Since then, my wife has started working at a vet hospital and frequently guilt trips me to agree to take in more animals. We have taken in guinea pigs, lizards, and disabled dogs. Each new animal starts with promises of her taking it to work and giving it all of her attention. But when a new animal comes along, she jumps at the chance and disregards her older responsibilities with the previous animal. She feels that as her partner, I should support her efforts. And to an extent, I agree, but we currently have 7 dogs. One of our dogs can't walk at all and requires a ton of attention. I am the only person to make sure he gets time in his wheelchair and that he gets water, food, and time outside each day. Before bringing home a new animal, she will run it by me. But if I refuse, I get guilt-tripped. There is always a spiel about how saving dogs is her passion and how she wants to run a rescue one day. I agree that if it is her passion and she wants to foster the dog, then that is okay. But so far we end up keeping them. I also suggest she volunteers at a rescue, and so far she hasn't. The most recent dog she has brought home is now starting fights with our other dogs, and I feel this is just the most chaotic thing and really can't deal with living like this. On top of all the animals, her friend recently divorced and is now living with us in our male 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. We have an acre of yard for dogs. She has been with us for about 5 months now and can't keep a job, so she contributes nothing and eats all of our food. I don't feel right trying to kick her out because she truly has no family and would be homeless. But at the same time, she definitely takes advantage of the situation. Frankly, I am going crazy. I don't know if I even have the energy to try to save this anymore. I feel I have no peace or space of my own and even stay late at work just to avoid going home any sooner than I have to. I'm looking for any advice on what to say or do to try to fix my situation. I am very introverted and a pushover, so I know that's probably making it worse. To add, thank you all for telling me what I was refusing to hear. To clarify, the dogs aren't living in filth and aren't uncared for, but yes, it is unfair to them to not have the attention they deserve. My wife's mom was a hoarder, and wife is very clean and minimalist, but interesting to see the hoarding aspect come through in other ways. For all saying to go to her coworkers, it's wild. Her boss, the vet doctor, is one of the main culprits encouraging her. The vet also has an absurd amount of dogs and other animals. Again, thank you all for reassurance and advice that I'm actually not crazy and living like this is crazy. We have couples therapy on Thursday that was previously scheduled, but this was all very helpful in putting to paper what I was struggling to say. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Sit her down. Tell her that she's taken your home, which is supposed to be a refuge, and turned it into a zoo and a boarding house. Be honest. Tell her how you stay late at work in order to avoid being at home. Tell her how you feel you have no control over your life because of her actions. Tell her you can't take it anymore and that big changes need to happen that will require concessions on her part. See how she reacts. If she tries to put you off, we'll see or dismiss your concerns or otherwise pushes back or doesn't seem to take your concerns seriously, IT quote S lawyer time. Because if that's how she reacts, she's choosing the status quo over you because the status quo is what works for her. Comment 2. There are 2 types of posts I've yet to ever see have a good outcome. They are hoarding of stuff and hoarding of pets. The people only get worse, they don't change, and will run themselves into homeless at some stage. I still remember a woman whose mother was living in her car with 5 dogs posting here in despair as her mother lost everything and everyone around her over the years. You're seeing the onset of serious mental health condition, and it only gets worse. It's time to clear house, dude, or clear out yourself. This has no happy ending, I'm afraid. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. First off, the couples therapy session we had last Thursday was a disaster. I went in hoping we could find some common ground, but it quickly turned into a blame game. My wife accused me of not supporting her passion, and I, in turn, brought up how overwhelmed I felt with all the animals and her friend living with us. The therapist tried to mediate, but it felt like we were just going in circles. I left the session feeling more frustrated and hopeless than before. The next day, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was so fed up with the situation that I decided to take matters into my own hands. Without consulting my wife, I called a local animal rescue organization and arranged for them to take in 3 of our dogs, including the one that was starting fights. I thought it would help ease the chaos at home and give the dogs a better environment. When my wife found out, she was livid. She accused me of betraying her trust and undermining her passion. We had a huge fight, and she ended up staying at a friend's place for a couple of days. During those days, I had some time to reflect on my actions. I realized that while my intentions were good, I had gone about it the wrong way. I should have communicated with her and tried to find a solution together. When she finally came back, I apologized and explained my reasoning. She was still hurt, but she agreed that we needed to find a better way to manage our situation. In the meantime, her friend who was living with us finally got a job. It's not a great job, but it's something. She's been contributing a bit more around the house and even offered to help with the animals. This has taken some of the pressure off me, but it's still not enough to make a significant difference. One night while we were having dinner, my wife opened up about her childhood. She told me about how her mom's hoarding tendencies made her feel neglected and how rescuing animals gave her a sense of purpose and control. It was an eye-opening moment for me. I realized that her passion for rescuing animals was deeply rooted in her past and was a way for her to cope with her childhood trauma. This made me understand her actions a bit more, but it also made me worry about her mental health. I suggested that she see a therapist on her own to work through these issues. She was hesitant at first, but after some convincing, she agreed to give it a try. She's had a couple of sessions so far, and while it's too early to see any significant changes, I'm hopeful that it will help her find a healthier balance. As for me, I've been trying to be more assertive and set boundaries. I've started saying no to new animals and standing my ground when she tries to guilt trip me. It's been tough, but I feel like I'm slowly regaining some control over my life. I've also been making an effort to spend more time outside the house, whether it's going for a walk or meeting up with friends. It's been a small but necessary step towards finding some peace and space for myself. One of the more unexpected consequences of all this has been the impact on our relationship. While we're still struggling, the recent events have forced us to communicate more openly and honestly. We've had some tough conversations, but it's also brought us closer in a way. We're both trying to understand each other's perspectives and find a way to make this work. But before I get into that, there's something else I need to mention. My wife's boss, the vet doctor who encouraged her to take in more animals, has been under investigation for animal neglect. It turns out that the vet's own home was in terrible condition, with too many animals and not enough care. This has been a huge wake-up call for my wife. She realized that even people with the best intentions can get overwhelmed and that it's okay to ask for help or say no. This revelation has made her more open to the idea of volunteering at a rescue instead of bringing more animals home. She's also started looking into ways to support animal rescues financially or through other means that don't involve taking in more pets. It's a small but significant step towards finding a healthier balance. In the midst of all this, I've been dealing with my own internal conflicts. I've always been a pushover, and this situation has forced me to confront that part of myself. It's been a painful process, but I'm learning to stand up for myself and set boundaries. It's not easy, and I still have a long way to go, but I feel like I'm making progress. One thing that has helped is talking to my own therapist. I've been seeing someone for a few weeks now, and it's been a huge relief to have a safe space to vent and work through my feelings. My therapist has been helping me develop strategies to be more assertive and take care of my own needs. It's been a slow process, but I feel like I'm starting to find my footing. Looking back, I can see how my wife's passion for rescuing animals and my tendency to avoid conflict created a perfect storm. We've both made mistakes, but we're trying to learn from them and move forward. It's not going to be easy, and there will undoubtedly be more challenges ahead, but I feel like we're on a better path now. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for confronting my girlfriend after catching her friend groping her and finding out they were sending intimate messages? My girlfriend is bisexual and primarily dated women before we met. We're getting serious and talking about getting married. We've dated for over 2 years. But recently, she's been making a lot of polygamous jokes, and I'm not really into it. She has this friend that I get the feeling is just waiting for a hiccup in our relationship to make a move. She's bisexual and openly makes jokes about being intimacy with my girlfriend. I've shared that I don't like it before, but she jokes that I'm gay for not being into it. Maybe I could be into an experience, but honestly, this person just makes me uncomfortable too often. Besides that, she's just not my type sexually. We had a long conversation around Infection 19 about how she wanted to be referred to as he, him, so I did. 2 years later, he wanted to be referred to as they, them, so I did. Recently, she's circled around back to she, her, which is fine, but the whole time she dresses like a Kyle. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a Kyle is a kind of guy that wears Fox apparel, washes down vape with a Monster energy drink. She would be attractive, but it's like her idea of masculinity was formed from high school douchebags, not 30-year-old men. Anyway, Saturday we got into a fight because we had some friends over. Kyle was the last one to leave. We'd all been drinking. I was in the kitchen putting away some food, and I see this jerk put his hand on my girlfriend's butt. I let her know right away, that's the line, you crossed it, stop. My girlfriend gives her classic, that's just how girls joke, and goes. They did this silly little dance twirl thing that ended with my girlfriend on Kyle's lap. I'd had enough and stepped into the room. My girlfriend doubled down and said that most guys would be dying to fool around with 2 women. I was blunt and said that I was uninterested in sharing her with anyone. Kyle then said something like, maybe I could strap one on, maybe you'd prefer a man. I was drunk. This jerk had his hand on my girlfriend's waist and my girlfriend on her lap. I lost it. I don't remember what I said exactly. Something like, if you were a man, you would have been kicked out or knocked out already. This struck some kind of chord with her. She postured up like a gorilla, and it was a 3-way shouting match. I don't know what was said exactly, but it ended with Kyle loudly proclaiming that she had to leave before someone got hurt. Here's the problem. My girlfriend somehow thinks that I need to apologize. Me, for threatening a person who came into my home, grabbed my girlfriend's butt, sat her down on her lap, and insinuated that I'd like to be ass-fucked by a man. She says that I needlessly introduced violence and forced Kyle to drive home intoxicated. I honestly can't fathom an apology, and I honestly don't care to have Kyle in our life anymore. I'm not typically the one to die on a hill, but I feel like anything short of digging my heels in is unacceptable. I told her I'd think about it. She's staying at a cousin's house for a few days. If it was just one night, I'd get it, but it's been several. Saturday was just the tipping point. But honestly, she acts like this is something she can get out of her system. I think she wants to be bisexual, and I think a lot of her friends are doing the poly thing. It's just not for me. I want one partnership with one person. All of her poly friends are in relationships, but they come and go. There's nothing concrete there. She claims to want kids. She claims to want commitment, but her actions say otherwise. To add, she claims she's coming by to pick up things for work. I feel like a conversation is unavoidable. I've taken what I want out of the competent suggestions here and applied the relevant context into the talking points I want to hit. I may update tomorrow or whenever I feel better. I don't know if this post was a good or bad idea. I won't reply until I feel like it. I have a big band-aid to rip off. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Dude, you're in a relationship that is inconsistent with your values. How long do you intend to torture yourself and her by trying to control her as opposed to controlling yourself and making difficult choices about your happiness? How do you see the future here? That one day she stops being bi and stops desiring other women or polyamory. Like, where's the happy ending here? There isn't one. You're incompatible. Comment 2. I've shared that I don't like it before, but she jokes that I'm gay for not being into it. This is shaming tactics. If you know you're not into something and you've already told the people around you, yet they still try to get into it, you need to remove them from your life because now they're being disrespectful to your boundaries. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So after my girlfriend stayed at her cousin's for a few days, she came back to pick up some work stuff. I thought we'd have a conversation, but she just grabbed her things and left without saying much. I felt like I was in limbo, not knowing where we stood. I decided to give her some space, thinking maybe she needed time to cool off. But then a few days later, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was feeling pretty down and ended up talking to one of my close friends about the whole situation. I vented about Kyle and how uncomfortable I was with the whole poly thing. My friend, trying to be supportive, suggested that maybe I should try to understand my girlfriend's perspective better. He said that maybe I was being too rigid and that relationships require compromise. I thought about it and decided to reach out to my girlfriend to see if we could talk things through. We met up at a coffee shop and I tried to approach the conversation with an open mind. I told her that I was willing to listen and understand her feelings about polyamory, even though it wasn't something I was comfortable with. She seemed relieved that I was open to talking, and we had a long conversation about our relationship and what we both wanted. She admitted that she had been feeling torn between her desire for a poly relationship and her love for me. I told her that I loved her and wanted to make things work, but I needed to feel secure and respected in our relationship. We decided to take things slow and see if we could find a middle ground. For a few days, things seemed to be getting better. We were communicating more openly, and I felt like we were making progress. But then I made another mistake. I was still feeling uneasy about Kyle and the whole situation, so I decided to check my girlfriend's phone while she was in the shower. I know it was wrong, but I was desperate for some clarity. What I found shattered me. There were messages between my girlfriend and Kyle that were way more intimate than I had imagined. They were talking about their feelings for each other and making plans to meet up. My girlfriend had been telling Kyle that she was confused about her feelings for me and that she wasn't sure if she could commit to a monogamous relationship. I felt like a fool for trying to make things work when she was clearly not on the same page. I confronted her as soon as she came out of the shower. She was furious that I had invaded her privacy, but I was too hurt to care. I told her that I couldn't be in a relationship where I felt like I was constantly competing with someone else. She tried to explain that she was just confused and that she still loved me, but I couldn't get past the betrayal. I told her that I needed some time to think and left the apartment. The fallout from that confrontation was brutal. We decided to take a break from each other to figure out what we really wanted. I moved in with a friend for a while, and she stayed at our apartment. During this time, I did a lot of soul searching. I realized that I couldn't be in a relationship where I didn't feel secure and respected. I needed someone who was fully committed to me and our future together. Meanwhile, my girlfriend was spending more time with Kyle. I heard from mutual friends that they were getting closer and that it seemed like they were starting a relationship. It hurt to hear, but it also made me realize that I had made the right decision. I couldn't be with someone who wasn't sure about me. As I was trying to move on, I started reflecting on our relationship and how we got to this point. I remembered how we met and how we fell in love. She had always been open about her sexuality, and I admired her for it. But looking back, I realized that there were signs that she wasn't fully committed to a monogamous relationship. She had always had close relationships with her friends, and I had always felt a bit insecure about it. I tried to brush it off, thinking that it was just my own insecurities, but now I see that there was more to it. I also thought about my own desires and what I wanted in a relationship. I realized that I had been compromising too much and not being true to myself. I wanted a partner who was fully committed to me and our future together. I wanted someone who shared my values and goals. I knew that I couldn't settle for anything less. In the end, our relationship didn't survive. We officially broke up a few weeks later. It was painful, but it was also a relief. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could finally start focusing on myself and what I wanted in life. I started going to therapy to work through my feelings and to learn how to set healthy boundaries in future relationships. As for my ex-girlfriend, she and Kyle are now in a relationship. I don't have any contact with her anymore, but I hope that she finds what she's looking for. I've learned a lot from this experience, and I'm determined to use these lessons to build a healthier and happier future for myself. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.